Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by the amazing Jessica of Clean Product Junkie and the Clean Living podcast. In this informative and inspiring conversation, Jessica shares some simple steps to help us make better choices for our own health and that of the planet when we buy beauty and household products. She shares with me her truly amazing journey from being a concerned mum making choices to help her young children overcome chronic disease, to recently becoming part of a panel advising legislators in America creating the new guidelines to improve product safety. She's incredibly passionate about how powerful consumers actually are and how it is our duty and responsibility to vote with our dollars to elicit the changes we want to see, reminding us that we are truly more powerful than at first we imagine. With a staggering 80,000 chemicals having been introduced to the marketplace since World War II, and the fairly unregulated manufacturing and labelling of both home products and those for beauty and skincare, numerous studies showing that many ingredients can be detrimental to our health and cause damage to our environment, we both believe that empowering consumers with the education they need to allow them to make safer, healthier choices is absolutely imperative. Jessica has dedicated the past decade of her life to making this as easy as possible so that it becomes a simple process for us all to undertake, and she guides us through how you can make these changes in your own home. Well, welcome Jessica, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I'm actually really excited to speak with you and learn more from you about all the amazing things that you do. But I like to just get started with my guests by just asking them to share a little bit about their nature story and what nature's meant to them over their life, or if that's evolved or changed over time. So if there's anything you'd just like to share to get us started, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to chatting. So as far as nature is concerned, I grew up in a small area in the middle of the United States. And my parents are both from small towns as well. And so just growing up in that environment, I used to go camping with my grandparents and would take moments of like solo time where I would like walk off by myself and just sit and listen to the birds. And, if we were next to a river, and my mom grew up on a farm. So going back to visit my grandparents as a child and just going and sitting by the pond, and just, I guess I've always connected to nature. Obviously, when I was younger, I didn't realize the power that it had and really what it was doing to me mentally. But I would always feel more, I would always feel like I was able to go out and tackle things better after I'd had that time.
Yeah.
Listening to all the amazing things that nature brings to us, right? And as I've gotten older and things have evolved as far as like my understanding of what that's doing, it's something that I feel really passionately about passing on to my children, like taking a moment to, admire the sunset, or pointing out different birds as we're driving or walking, taking them on hikes. My parents love to hike and camp and stuff. So that's something that, we're collectively passing on to my children.
Amazing.
So I love it. And then from what I do, it actually, for my job, it's infused in that as well, which I'm sure we'll get into, but talk a lot about the power of choosing household products that are more from a natural standpoint versus always going towards synthetic, which have a purpose and a place, but natural ingredients and natural things, materials, they all have such power. And I think we have, as a society, kind of gotten away from like really appreciating that. Until recently, I do feel like there's been a movement people embracing that more, which makes me really excited. So I feel like it's kind of come full circle in my life, like always kind of having that connection, and then now doing something that is directly related to the power of nature and being able to share that with others.
Yeah, I think we've kind of, I don't know, maybe we've kind of reached a tipping point. I was reading your website earlier, which is Clean Product Junkie, isn't it? And I saw you'd written, I think it was, is it 80,000 chemicals have been added to our environment since World War II? And I was like, that was quite a shocking statistic. And I think that's maybe like we've kind of reached a threshold where we've kind of got so bombarded by them, and we're having so many reactions to them, both ourselves and also their impact on the environment. So it's kind of twofold, isn't it? And they go hand in hand. And that's why I love what you do, because I think there are people that are completely unaware of the amount of chemicals that have been created and that are now we're being bombarded with. But then there are also people that have started to get that awareness, and they're like, they just don't know where to start to like, how do I move away from this cycle?
Well, that's true. And I think a big focus of what I do is helping people understand that they both have a place in our lives. Not all chemicals are bad, and not all natural is good. I mean, when you think about heavy metals and poison ivy, and there's so many natural asbestos, like there's so many natural elements in our life that are just not good for us. So when it comes to our health, it's all about finding that balance of the safe synthetics and the safe all natural, and using those when it relates to like our household products and other areas of our lives.
So you kind of came through to this through actually your two young children, didn't you? It was like an awareness of what you were putting on their skin and their health issues that led you down this route to your now business.
Yeah. So I've always kind of been more aware, I guess, of the potential impacts of what we are using in our daily lives. And I would say most people, I have twin boys, they're 13 now. But when they were little, I gravitated towards more natural stuff, just in general. Most of my friends at the time that wasn't really on their radar. I also like cloth diapered them, and I made their baby food and was, trying to focus on organic as much as possible, avoided dyes and food. Just, again, stuff that maybe now is more common, but back then definitely was not. But what happened to me is I, again, was using all natural products for the most part, and I thought I was doing the best for my kids. Both my sons have asthma. My one son has eczema, and we were using this body wash that was formulated for eczema that was recommended to us by my son's dermatologist. It was oatmeal, all natural, soothing formula. And I just didn't realize how unregulated, and here in the United States, this is a bigger issue than other parts of the world. But here at the time, there was only 11 ingredients that had ever been banned from being used in our products. And the last time a major update to the federal law had been passed was in 1938. Oh, wow. So I had started to realize that even though I was using these safe products, or what I thought was safe, but they might not be as safe as I thought. So instead of just looking at the marketing aspect of things, I decided to turn the bottle around and start looking at each ingredient and seeing what it was and if there was any safety concerns associated with them. And what I realized is that there was not only ingredients that were linked to like known carcinogens and hormone disruptors, which is very concerning. So ingredients that have known implications of potentially causing cancer down the road and causing fertility issues down the road. But there were ingredients linked to exacerbating asthma, which both my sons have. So more short term, irritating my son's breathing issues. And then there was an ingredient that was linked to irritating eczema in this eczema formulated bottle. Wow. There was a lot of ingredients that were there to soothe eczema, but there was actually an ingredient in there that made it foam, the formula foam, that was linked to irritating eczema. So it just kind of like turned my world around as far as like my idea of what I was using being safe. Made me realize, well, if this is the case with the kids' products that I'm using, then 100% sure that it's going to be, the same situation with the products that I'm using.
Yeah.
And at that point, I just couldn't sit idly by. Like I, was already kind of my friend's resource as far as like, what do you use for body wash? What do you use for this, that, and the other? And here I thought I was giving them really solid advice and suggestions. And come to find out, I was still telling them to use products that were linked to health issues. So it's been my mission ever since to not only educate myself on how to find the best, safest products out there, but as I'm learning it, share it with others so that they can do the same.
Yeah, I think I sort of had a similar issue with my own health, with thyroid problems, and it was through that I started looking at labels myself, and it's quite overwhelming for a lot of people, which is why I love what you do, because you kind of break it down and you're like, okay, you can piggyback on my like over a decade worth of experience and knowledge, because a lot of the labels have just products that some people can't even pronounce, can they? Like understand what they mean. And
right.
And there's also like, I think like you touched on, it is worse in the US, but even in the UK and Europe and around the world, we have products that are labeled like green and natural, and perhaps here not so much organic, but I know in America the organic kind of the use of that term in labels doesn't actually mean anything. I think here we're a little bit better off, that we have things like the Soil Association and a couple of kind of governing bodies that actually regulate, and you can check on bottles whether their logos are there, that they've actually kind of authenticated that the products are organic. But it is a minefield, isn't it? It's just, you think, oh, natural, that looks good, I'll go for that.
Yeah. And that's one of my biggest missions in life, is to get people to really change their focus from the source of an ingredient to the safety of the ingredient. Because the source at the end of the day doesn't matter. And most people don't realize this, but especially when it comes to personal care products, there is no such thing as a 100% all natural product.
Right.
In order for a product to be on the shelves, there has to be preservatives in it. There are some natural preservatives out there, but they're just not as effective. Most companies don't use them. They're very expensive, and their shelf life is not near as long as a synthetic. But as far as the synthetic preservatives go, there are safer ones than others. And also, sometimes companies will put too much of those synthetics in there. Even if they're safe, that could potentially put them over the edge to make them unsafe. So it's just about changing our mindset. As annoying as this is, nobody wants to feel like they have to become an expert label reader. Who wants to do that? I mean, I do this for a living, and I don't even want to be an expert label reader, So it's more just about arming yourself with some information to help guide your purchasing choices, but understanding that you cannot trust companies' marketing to help you make those decisions. You can't trust a store. Like here, we have the Targets everywhere, and they are definitely doing better than other stores as far as like promoting clean, safe products. But even within those products, Sephora is another great one, there are still ingredients of concern. And so every person has to decide what they're willing to, be okay with and what they're not. And so that's my goal, is to help people determine, okay, this is what's most important to me, and I am okay to make concessions on this, and just kind of understanding all of that on a bigger scale, and then breaking it down to make it easier to implement in their lives.
Yeah. So you're sort of saying like you've got almost like a sliding scale, where you've got like really bad at one end and as good as it gets at the other end, and you kind of want it to be in that top 50%, and then from there there's sort of different things that you can focus and prioritize on. And I think you're what's good as well about what you're saying there is price can be a problem for some people, and some of the top, like we're getting like 90% of it is like really good quality. And you were saying like they use all natural, is more expensive, and for some people they can't afford that. So then it's like, finding a choice for them that takes them a good proportion of the way there to something that's safer and cleaner and healthier for themselves and also the environment, but that they can comfortably afford to use as well.
Yeah, and that's actually a really great point, because there's 2 points there that I would love to make. One is it's all about balance. So there's certain areas of our home. So I help people go through their household products in particular and identify hidden toxins, replace those products with safer options. And in doing that, a lot of times what ends up happening is that people will choose products, let's say for cleaning, that are a lot less expensive than what they were using before. Therefore, in their budget, they have more money that they can use to spend on personal care products, which can tend to be the more expensive products that you have to swap. It's imperative for us, those of us that do have the ability to choose those more expensive, safer options, to do that for the long term, because what that ends up doing is, first of all, it puts more emphasis on the importance of this. It lets companies know that we have purchasing power here and we're going to support companies that are doing better. And then ultimately, by doing that, it will eventually lower those price points down to the point where other companies can then use those as well and create safer products. So again, it's kind of like having that long-term mentality when it comes to this. And again, if you can afford to support those companies and do better just in general, then it's really good to do that. And if you can't, it's again finding that balancing act. Like, I don't really spend much money on cleaning supplies at all, so then that opens up some of my funds to be able to use better personal care products that are supporting companies that are really doing good.
I think that's it's something I really love to talk about, actually, that you've just brought up there, Jessica, is this the power we have as individuals and using our buying power. I actually released a really good episode last week, and we were talking about how like actually businesses just have this amazing ability to like basically help us move on this journey to improve like the health of ourselves and the planet. And I love what you were saying there about actually, but they need us to support them. So like sometimes we feel powerless and we're not doing anything, but actually, by, seeking out these businesses that actually want to do the right thing, and by, using our buying power, our dollars, pounds to actually support them, we help them stay in business and be able to do more. And then they maybe increase their product range. Like their competitors go, oh, hang on a minute, these guys are taking a bigger slice of the market. We need to like look what they're doing and try and bring it into our own system. So yeah, I really loved what you've said there about actually sometimes when we do feel powerless, actually it's because we've kind of lost sight of actually the impact that we can have, and how we can be helping other people, and those of us that are fortunate enough to be able to spend a little bit more and choose what we're spending that on can actually help in the long term bring those products into the kind of reach of more and more people.
Yeah, I know. I think it's something that not a lot of people don't really take the time to think about, but I think it is such an important aspect of things, is just pausing and thinking where I spend my money matters. So, and I've seen this. I've been doing this for 8 years. I have seen this happen in these past 8 years, where when I first started, this wasn't really on people's radar. People weren't really thinking about the impact of the environmental toxins we're exposed to on a daily basis as much as they are now. Clean wasn't a thing. Clean personal care products, clean beauty was not a thing. And it is now. And the only reason why it is now is because people have become educated. They have changed the way that they shop. Pretty much every line or every company here has a clean line of some sort. They should all their products should be clean. I don't even think clean should be a thing. All products should be clean, right? But it is. And eventually, my hope is that this will continue to happen as, it will, as more people become aware and make smarter choices as they're shopping. And things will continue to change, but it's important for us as consumers to really take that in and understand the power that we have. And again, just like, thinking about the long-term benefits of us making those smarter choices.
Yeah, and the other thing I love there that I want to sort of come back to is you were talking about actually the products in your home and how actually by making cleaner choices you've actually saved yourself money. So I don't know if you want to like kind of expand on that a little bit more, give people some ideas of how you can save money. Perhaps it's by actually needing less products or just better products. I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah. So just as an example, I, in the last 5 years, have maybe purchased a cleaning supply, a cleaning product I can count on one hand.
Oh, wow.
So I use mostly, vinegar, baking soda, things that I have around my house. And then I use this product called the Force of Nature system for antibacterial, like, getting rid of the viruses, all that stuff. Yeah. And it uses vinegar, salt, and water.
Oh, wow. And okay. Wow.
That's amazing. Little machine. You use these little vials. And so it's there's much less impact on the environment because you're not buying all these plastic bottles, which another statistic most people don't realize is that over 90% of our plastics never get recycled. So even if you recycle your plastic bottles, you're still contributing to plastic pollution because they're most likely not going to get recycled anyways. So it's important to limit that whenever you can. So in that regard, as far as like what I spend on cleaning supplies, it's next to nothing. So whereas before that was a huge chunk of our monthly budget, right? Because you're buying, a different product for all these different things. They try to
it's
tell
endless,
you
isn't it? It's like
this. And, and I don't buy any of that stuff. I haven't bought toilet cleaner in 5 years. I haven't bought glass cleaner in 5 years. Like I use the same essential things and it just ultimately saves a ton of money and is so much better for your health because a lot of those products contain ingredients linked to health issues and also the environment. And they work just as good, by the way, because that's another thing. People are like, I don't want to use that stuff because it doesn't work as good. It does.
And it was the Force of Nature. I think you've got it on your website, haven't you? So your website we're going to put in the show notes so people can go there and then they can find out more about it. But I think there was another quote I saw on your website and it was like, clean doesn't actually have a scent. And I was like, we have just become like completely kind of almost brainwashed, I suppose, really, isn't it? Like by all of these. And it's mostly the household cleaners, isn't it? Like, your surface cleaners and your floor cleaners and things, like they all have these synthetic perfumes and scents. And like one of the big ones for me is people's laundry detergent as well. So I don't use a scented laundry detergent. We use a natural detergent. And like when I go past someone's house and like, I'm just walking on the street past their house and they're doing laundry, I'm like kind of recoil at the kind of the chemical scent that almost gives me a bit of a headache. And
yes, it's potent. It's so crazy. I'm the same. I'm walking around the neighborhood. I'm like, whoa. And this stuff sticks in the fibers of your clothing. So for anybody that has asthma in their family, it's huge to switch this laundry detergent. I have a program called the 5-Day Detox, and I walk through the 5 most important areas of your home to lower toxins. And that's the number one place I start with, because it's a really great example of like this one seemingly innocent purchase that you make has a huge impact. It's not only, what you're putting in your clothes that ends up or in the laundry that ends up in the water system. It heats up and it disperses into the air as you're using it. And then it sticks to the fibers of your clothes. So you're literally wearing these ingredients that have been shown to cause long-term and sometimes short-term health issues when it comes to like asthma and breathing issues, skin irritation, all that stuff. And this is something that you do for a lot of us on a daily basis. We're constantly doing laundry. So it's just a really good example of one area of the home that you can make an easy swap for. Like literally laundry detergent, if you're going to start anywhere, that's a great place to start. Like find something that is fragrance free, free of ingredients linked to hormone disruption and known carcinogens, asthma, eczema, like check the label for that and make that one swap, and you're just setting yourself up for much better success down the road.
Yeah, I think people underestimate, don't they? I mean, when you think about like your laundry detergent, it's like you're washing like the things that sit on your skin, like, and it's like, it's not just your clothes, but like your bedding as well. Like you're literally,
you're literally surrounding yourself with it all day, every day, day and night.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And you think, so that's really, really nice that like actually for people who want, feeling overwhelmed, want one thing to start with, it's like, okay, that's a really good one to go and to start with, is to find an alternative laundry detergent, or some of these more natural options that you can do that don't even use detergents, and they can start with that.
Yes. And there's so many great options out there that work just as good, and they don't have the health implications attached to them.
And something else that you touched on there, which again comes probably ties more back to my podcast and nature as well, is you talked about the actual impact on sort of our aquatic life and the aquatic environment, our rivers, our streams, then out into our oceans. And that was something, again, that I became aware of quite a while ago now, probably sort of 8 years ago. And it was around sunscreen, actually. And, blissfully unaware, busy lavering on, the factor 30 or whatever it was, one of the, mainstream sunblocks, and had no idea until I stumbled across an article, actually, the impact that it has on our ocean life, on our aquatic life. And so then I started looking at, I think they're often referred to as reef safe, as in like coral reefs and the sea environment, safer alternatives. But yeah, there's just so many aspects, isn't there, of places that our choices for better things for our own health actually have these lovely ripple effects, I guess, talking about water, ripple effects out, and can help so many different areas as well.
Well, and that's a huge part of, when I'm helping people kind of go through this process, like, what are your priorities? For some people, sadly enough, they're not as concerned about how things are impacting their own health, but they care about how they're impacting the environment and wildlife and aquatic life. So you can make those swaps, and then you're going to have that positive impact on your health as well, or vice versa. Like, let's focus on how these things are affecting us. And a side effect of that is it's going to be better for our planet and our wildlife and our aquatic life. So they go hand in hand. And yes, there's some things that could potentially be okay for us that are going to be harmful for aquatic life, and vice versa. But in general, they typically, the safer products that you choose for your household and for your home and your family's health are going to be better for the planet and for aquatic life. So it can be a little overwhelming kind of thinking about those implications. But the other great thing is that we live in a day and age where there's tons of information available, tons of research out there. It's just about us as consumers taking a moment to pay attention and really understand that, and utilize those resources, and try to make these changes in our lives, as inconvenient and annoying as they are. The one thing I love about what I do and help coach people through is that once you find these safer alternatives, you don't have to think about it anymore. So it's about coming up with a plan, sticking to it as things run out, as your bottles are getting lower. Start thinking about, okay, I need to find something to replace this with. I'm not just going to grab the normal stuff that I get because I have found a few ingredients in here that I'm not comfortable with. What am I going to replace this with? And then once you find something that you like, that works really well, that's better for the environment, that's better for your health, then you can scratch that off. You don't have to think about it ever again. You know what I mean? There's so many things in life that it's just this constant. So again, it's just figuring out coming up with a plan and sticking to it, and just knowing, okay, in the next 6 months or so, next year, I'm going to make this a priority.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a nice thing as well, isn't it? Is by doing that, as things start to run out, that you stagger it a little bit. It's not a question of, we're not asking people to listen to this podcast and tomorrow they've got to literally go through their house and throw out everything and buy brand new replacements. But actually, just as things start ending and finishing, bottles become empty, just one product at a time, just find something better. And it then becomes a manageable process for people.
Yeah. 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 And like thinking about, if you're listening to this and you're pregnant, like going out there and you're going to have to buy a bunch of stuff, like kind of just knowing this information and being able to buy the better stuff from the get-go. Like, yeah. So yes, there's all, depends on where you're at in life, what you're doing, but an all or nothing approach never works. At least I have found people that are like, oh my God, everything's killing us, and they want to get rid of everything. They end up eventually just giving up on it because it does become overwhelming. And they're like, they accept the fact that, quote, everything's killing us, which it's not. So, but it's like our brains are kind of wired to think the worst. And so we're just, and there's so much again, scientific evidence and research studies out there that show that our bodies are so adaptable. So there's actually been a few studies done with, they just did this on women in particular, but it applies to men too, testing their urine for levels of parabens, phthalates, and a few other ingredients that are linked to hormone disruption and cancer, and checking the levels, and then asking them to eliminate their exposure to those. So eliminate using products that have these ingredients in them. And then they would test their urine after for the presence of these ingredients. And they went from levels off the charts to basically nothing. So our bodies are very resilient and adaptable. And so as you're making these changes in your life, your body is doing better because of it. So it's just knowing that. Again, you don't have to do it all at one time, but just know that every swap that you make is having a positive impact on your health and your family's health. And just keep that in mind and just keep going.
Yeah. And that's really, I love that as well, because it's, some people do feel like, oh my God, it's too late. I've got to be making these mistakes all my life. The damage is done, kind of thing. And actually that's really empowering to be like, well, it's never too late. Your body is able to, once you start eliminating these things, to actually detox itself, regenerate and heal. And that's a really empowering thought for a lot of people, I think, to give them a bit of hope and start them on this journey. There's lots of ways that you actually support people as well. So you've got a fantastic podcast, which I think is the Clean Living Made Easy podcast, which has some great, fantastic. There's a fantastic library of information there for people to dig into. And but you also have some resources on your website, and I think you've just recently launched a workshop as well, haven't you, that people can join you on?
Yes. Yeah. So I have a few things on my website, starting from, totally free resources. I have a free label reading guide. I go through the top 3 ingredients to look for as you're shopping for products that are linked to health issues that are really common in products. I also have a list of some of my favorite products that I personally use and suggest to my clients, because I also work one-on-one with people if they're just like, okay, I know I need to do this, but I don't want to, I don't have the time.
Don't have the bandwidth.
Right. Yeah. Just you help me. You tell me what I need to do. So I've helped people make these swaps. And so I just have a list of like recommended products. And then articles, blog, all this stuff. If you want more of a one-on-one guide, I have a virtual home detox, 5-day detox, which I mentioned before, that walks people through the 5 most important areas, just breaks it down and helps you start the process. And then, my workshop I have through the end of October, and it, goes through a lot of what we talked about, but dives even deeper and really tries to set up the importance of why this would be something you would want to commit to and start to make these changes. And I give people even more ingredients to look for and additional resources to to
So
check
it's
out.
a bit of a deeper dive for people that have, perhaps touched a little bit on this but they want to actually take it to another level and find out a bit more.
Yes. Yeah. I try to meet everybody where they're at because everybody has different time, availability, different budgets, all the
Yeah.
things. So it's just about, I just want people to understand how important this is and that it should be made a priority, whether it's, a little bit or a lot. Like this should be on your radar. You should be looking at how environmental toxins affect your life. And my message is always, our homes are the one place that we do have control over what our exposure is. We can't control what we're exposed to as we're out in the world, but we spend most of our time in our homes. And we can control how much we're exposed to in our homes to some extent. So it's just about, making those safer choices and understanding that that's going to have a positive impact on your life. Once I made those swaps with my sons, change the laundry detergent, change the body washes and lotions and all the things. Since then, my son's asthma has basically been non-existent. They've maybe needed their inhalers 5 times in the last 8 years.
Wow.
My son's eczema within 6 months was basically gone. He had been on this roller coaster ride of needing steroid cream and just was miserable.
Yeah.
And since then, if he gets a little flare up, which is very, very rare, we use a very basic ointment and within a day or two, it's totally gone. So it's just about understanding, like we were talking about, the positive implications or the positive effects of making these changes and just committing to them.
That's fantastic. And I mean, eczema is a very tricky condition for people who have it. It really can make them incredibly miserable, constant irritation and pain. And I think to hear that you were able to bring it so under control for him is just fantastic.
Yeah, because that's not something a lot of people realize. I mean, even talking to my dermatologist, I had started doing some research thinking about, well, is it something that he's eating? Which we finally did kind of pinpoint that it could have been certain foods that was irritating it. But then on top of that, or was causing it, then on top of that, we're irritating it by the products that we're using. So it's very multi-layered. And I think, as we're talking to our dermatologist, which they're there to help you figure out how to make it less prominent in your lives by using medication or that, other things to help you not feel miserable all the time. But most of the time they're not discussing the root cause of it and things that you can do to even limit your irritation from in the first place. So I just think it's important for us to understand that, like, there are some things we can do to even keep you from having to use the medication and having it be as bad.
I think that's quite often the focus for doctors is quite often on trying to manage the symptoms as much as possible. And actually, by the approach you've taken, both looking at his diet and obviously also the environmental toxins, was actually just trying to eliminate that additional sort of toxin load on his system that gave him a better chance to make, for his symptoms to come much more under control.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest message, is that we do have more control than what we realize. Like there are things we can do to help limit our exposure to things that will help in the long run.
You mentioned there, like, it can be quite simple. You said, like, there's 3 common ingredients and I think that's quite powerful as well, isn't it? Just to be like, okay, you don't have to learn like what all of these chemicals are, but if you can just find like the 3 ingredients. So I'll encourage people to go to your website and get that download from you. But you've mentioned the word a few times and talked about hormones, and I think for women that's particularly important, isn't it? Is the amount of hormone disruptors that we're actually exposed to can have a huge impact on our health and well-being. And it's so that's another byproduct of what you're doing is also helping women's health, really, isn't it? Particularly.
Yeah. No, it's true. And going through, different hormonal changes, at different times in our lives, like if we're limiting our exposure to these hormone disrupting ingredients, then that's going to make those peaks and valleys less of an issue. It's just not going, they're not going to be as hard on our bodies. And I think, we all know how much infertility is affecting people now. So it's like being able to limit that. And that's not just on the women's side, for men too. There's many hormone disrupting chemicals that are used in men's products that contribute to the problem too. So it's, it's about choosing the products that don't have as many of those. Obviously, the most ideal situation is for them to not have any, but limiting them, and just knowing that eventually, if we keep choosing the products that don't have those, then companies will stop using them. So it shouldn't be that way, but that's just historically how things go. It takes consumer awareness to rise, their purchasing choices to change, and then follows legislation and more health protective laws. It seems completely ridiculous, and honestly it is, but it's just the way that it's set up. I think the EU and other parts of the world are a little bit better, but here in the United States,
there's definitely a lag, isn't there, in between the legislation, and I think sometimes it takes even if the awareness and the intention is for legislation, the legislation takes such a long time to like filter through all the necessary steps to actually become law, and then for those laws to, they have to give them a sort of bedding in period for the changes to be made, that actually quite often the consumer has more power than I think they realize, don't they? And actually sometimes by the time the legislation comes around, you kind of eliminated them from the whole system already, just by consumer choice.
Right. I mean, I still think it's important for the legislation to follow. I think it holds companies accountable, on a bigger scale, because there are always going to be companies that don't want to be held accountable. I've actually done here in the United States a lot of advocacy work in this area. So I've seen firsthand how this all plays out with legislation. When I first started talking to legislators, this wasn't something that they were hearing from constituents about. So it wasn't really on their radar. And then, so that was like 7 years ago, the first meeting I had with a legislator. And then skip forward to last year, I was fortunate enough to go to Washington, D.C. and talk to 7 different legislators in a day. In a big group. There were 10 groups, and we all spoke to 6 or 7 legislators that day. And it was just incredible, the progress that had been made, the awareness that was there. Every single person that we talked to understood the gravity of the situation, and that change needed to be made. But there was a lot of work leading up to that. And eventually it resulted in us getting some more health protective laws in place here in the United States. That a bill was passed in December of 2022, and it will go into effect in the next couple of years. But the only reason why that was even possible was because of consumer awareness and them reaching out to their representatives, letting them know that this was something that was a concern of theirs, and that they wanted this to be a priority for them. So
I think that's both of us are podcasters, so I think this is a particularly interesting point. But people forget to use their voice, don't they? They really do.
They do.
Yeah.
Again, just like our purchasing power, our voice also has a lot of power. So it's so easy to think that it doesn't. I think there's so much going on in the world all the time, and there's so many things that we want to change, but if we don't speak up for the things that are really important to us, nothing will ever change. And the only reason why things change is because collectively people band together and make it known that this is unacceptable and that we need change. So I personally think it should be all of our, we should all be committed to that on some level, big or small. So, figuring out what that is for you.
I think that's it's amazing. I love that story, and I think, you know, like when you look at it, it's like there you were as a young new mum with your boys suffering with their health issues, and it started you on this journey, and it's led you to the sort of forefront of helping to shape future legislation to empower other people and make it easier for them, so they don't have to learn all of these things. So there is, you know, like you said, the accountability higher up the chain. And I think so often we forget that actually as individuals we aren't powerless and that we can, you know, we can take these steps, we can move things forward. And I think part of that comes from community. Like you said, there was a whole group of you that went, and I think that's been part of the power of what you've created as well. You've brought this community to life where you're able to help and support them to make the changes, make it easier for them, having used all of your time and experience, and they can kind of springboard to the answer with you. And yeah, it's just I love stories like yours, Jessica. I really do. I think it just
Thank you.
you know, I think you're sort of quite a humble person, and I think a lot of people can relate to you as well, and feel like, oh well, hang on, you know, actually look what can be achieved, and you know, in quite a short time as well. You're talking of like 8-10 years, and it's amazing to see like the trajectory that you've come on.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I know it seems like a long time in some regards, but actually historically 8 to 10 years to get some meaningful change and create that awareness. It really is a testament to technology and our ability to reach more people and get people to understand how important it is. And we don't have to settle for these, you know, ingredients in our products that are linked to health issues for our families, like in future generations. We just don't. We can make changes, and it's really up to us to own that responsibility and choose differently, and understanding the ripple effect that has.
Yeah, I think the ripple effect is huge. I think I was listening to a fairly recent podcast of yours, and you were talking about mica and the supply chain. And I think that's the other thing is people maybe don't realize that actually by making these choices on, you know, things that they use on their home, their beauty products, makeup, that actually you can have this positive impact down the supply chain and affect people's lives in countries like thousands of miles away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's much bigger than us, and it's very multi-layered, but it's a responsibility. And I feel very fortunate that I get to do what I do and bring this issue to people. And there's so many issues out there that we really don't have a lot of ability to have direct impact like this. But to just know that a simple swap in a product can literally change your own personal health and well-being, and, you know, help the environment, and also help somebody who is, you know, a child in India who's mining mica in very dangerous conditions, be able to have a better, safer life. Like, it's really cool when you really dig down and think about it in that way.
Yeah.
So, and my hope is always to inspire people to understand that, and to, again, just put it on their radar so that they understand their purchasing power has such power.
Yeah, no, it's been fantastic talking to you, Jessica. I feel like we're kind of getting to a nice place to round up, but I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share, any sort of, you know, simple tips for people, or anything else that's just on your heart that you'd like to share with people today.
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered a lot. I think the one thing I would tell people, if you're just like, okay, what do I do today? What's something I can do right now? A couple really simple things you can do is take your shoes off in your home. It's the number one way toxins get into your house, into your lives. So just leave your shoes at the door. And then the other tip that I always like to share with people is, as far as products and choosing which ones to get, buy fragrance free. That's one of the 3 ingredients I tell people to avoid. And it's easy to see on the label. It's labeled as fragrance parfum. But it's a way for companies to put hundreds of different ingredients, many of which are linked to health issues, in the bottle. So a product could have literally 10 ingredients on it, but if it has fragrance in there, then it could have like 110. So
Okay.
shopping fragrance free is a really important step that we can take that has a really powerful impact on the entire industries, cleaning supplies and personal care products.
Okay, that's when you're talking about fragrance there, you're talking about it's a listed ingredient rather than actually, scent free. It's actually a listed ingredients of fragrance. And
yes, because it could say scent free on the bottle and then still have the ingredient fragrance on the label. So flip the bottle around and look for fragrance.
Okay. And essentially that actually what you're saying there is that isn't actually an ingredient. It's a way that they just cover up, like putting, so they don't have to declare, I guess, what they're actually including in the product by using that one labeling descriptor allows them to put all sorts of things in that you have no idea what's included.
Right. And it's there to protect their proprietary scent. But it also is utilized a lot by companies to put ingredients that are linked to health issues. There's lots of companies that are creating, quote, natural products. And so their entire ingredient list is really clean and people feel really good about it. And then they'll put fragrance on there. And that could potentially house a bunch of ingredients linked to health issues. So it's just important to not buy those. And a lot of companies are choosing to list their entire fragrance list on the label now, which helps people that have skin issues, right? Like if you're allergic to a certain ingredient and it's in fragrance, you don't know if it's in that product. But then it also just really highlights the importance of transparency. And the companies that are doing this, the concern that companies have is that their formulas will get stolen. But the companies that are doing this are not finding that that's an issue. So again,
that's an excuse basically that they've historically used, but
correct. Yes. So it's just, again, showing companies how important it is to be transparent with us as consumers.
And I guess if you think of it in terms of like we've been talking a lot about the home, but like in baking, like you can combine eggs, milk and flour, and you can get you can make all sorts of different things.
You have to know exactly how many eggs, exactly how many cups of flour. You can't just be told the ingredient list and then go out there and replicate that. It's a very complicated, complex situation. So again, yes, you said it very well. Companies have been hiding behind that for a very long time.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what you're doing is you're asking companies to step up and be accountable and be like, we need to be able to make these choices for our health if we've got allergies and things. So actually, we need you to step up and be honest with us about what you're including. And if you're ashamed of what you're including, then maybe you need to question whether you're including it.
Yeah. Well, and also I think, just understanding that the financial benefits to making these changes, companies get really stuck in that, well, we'll lose money if we start switching these ingredients. But if we do our job as consumers and start supporting companies that are doing this, doing better, then that is going to switch. That's going to make it more appealing for companies to do it. Because at the end of the day, most companies, unfortunately, don't care about our health. They just care about making money, right? Yeah. So if they see it as this, we can actually make more money if we make these changes. Companies are starting to understand that. So it's just really, again, leaning into that and understanding how we play our part in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've talked about before is basically kind of working within the existing framework that we have of society. And, that currently the majority of businesses are motivated by profit. So we need to speak to them in their language.
That's right. You want to make money, then you need to make these changes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you today, Jessica. Do you want to just give us your website and your podcast, how people can find you? I will include it in the notes, but just if you want to reiterate it for people.
Yeah, sure. So my website's cleanproductjunkie.com. And then my podcast is linked there, or you can go to the cleanlivingmadeeasypodcast.com.
Perfect. Oh, well, lovely. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for
Thank
this
you, Fiona.
conversation. And
This was amazing.
yeah, and we'll hopefully have to do it again in the future, and you can share some more hints and tips with us all. But thank you so
Oh, that would
much,
be
and
great.
thank you so much for everything that you're doing as well in the US, and helping people make the changes, and also encouraging legislation to change as well. It's fantastic to hear what people can do when they follow their passion.
Oh, thank you. Well, and thanks for having me. I, can talk about this stuff all day long. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Perfect. Lovely. Thanks, Jessica. Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.